Welcome back. This is part 2 of my major power tier list video. In this video we're going to be looking at tier B, C, and F. So just a few corrections. In the last video after I was reviewing it, I noticed that I misspoke and mistyped. There's actually 66 majors. I believe in the previous video I said there were 64. And this tier list covers an extra card, and that will be Vengeance of the Dead, the exploratory and the original version. The exploratory version is listed here, and I'll talk more about the other version and compare the two near the end of the video. I had some people ask for that. So with that said, let's get started with B tier. Okay, so once again, these tiers are in no particular order. Starting off, we have Settle into the Hunting Ground. This is a 3-cost, a Moonfire plant animal. It's target yourself. Your presence count as Badlands and Beasts. And then you have this threshold that gives you 2 fear, 2 damage, and then since it's in one of your lands, you may count all of those presents as Badlands. I don't have this card higher up because I feel it's very limited. Unless you're thresholding it, it pretty much does nothing. I actually think this is a little bit on the weaker side. I do have it as a 3-cost or in B tier because I do think there is potential with a lot of spirits like Many Minds, Fangs, Vengeance. There's some great spirits where this is a phenomenal pick. But for a lot of the spirits, it's pretty medium. I really wish this top part did something else. If you can threshold it though, it is pretty decent. It's 3 energy and it's about usually 3 to 4 fast damage, and it's a ton of elements, which is great. Sea Monsters. So this is one of those cards that gets a lot of criticism from my group as well. I have it in B tier, but I can see an argument for A tier. My big problem with Sea Monsters is it costs 5 energy, which cuts out a lot of spirits up here from playing it. Most spirits only have the action econ to afford 2 to 4 costs. Now, you can afford those 5 costs, but you can only play it maybe once or twice a game. It is incredibly powerful, especially when comboed with Many Minds. Pretty much game breaking with Many Minds, just because you can max this out, and it's an easy threshold since Many Minds is a water animal spirit. Since the threshold is 3/3, it is hard for non-water animal spirits to threshold this. And currently in the game, there really isn't any spirits that can threshold this easily. I think Many Minds is the only one that exists right now. Hopefully we'll get some in the future. The next one, we have Insatiable Hunger of the Swarm. I love this card. It's an air, plant, animal card. It could actually be an A tier. A lot of times I pick this card off element. Just the fact that you can add 2 beasts and then you get to do 4 damage fast for 4 energy is very, very powerful. The threshold is very challenging to hit. I mean, needing that 4 animal really cuts out a lot of spirits. This is another amazing card with Many Minds just because it's an instant threshold and it also scales with your beast count in. Just like Sea Monsters, Insatiable has essentially an infinite number of fear that you can generate. If Many Minds has 12 beasts, well, you get 12 fear. So the Blight kind of sucks to take, but I mean, it is what it is. I would rather take the Blight and gain this effect than not have the effect at all. It's more of a meme, but it's a combo. You can combo Insatiable Hunger with Infinite Vitality. And once again, Infinite Vitality says that whenever Blight would be added to target land, instead leave it on the card. That means Insatiable Hunger will not add the Blight when you target the Infinite Vitality land. Now, granted, that is 7 energy and 2 majors on the same land, and Infinite Vitality already protects the land, so why should you be playing this card in there? But it's just kind of funny. It's a fun meme combo. Vanish Softly Away, Forgotten by All. It's a 3-cost. It's a moon air card. 2 range, slow, and it's you remove 1 invader in 1 town, or you remove all damage invaders. If you have moon and air, if you have 3 moon, 3 air, you then get to pick 2 lands across the board and remove a single invader. The threshold is pretty weak for 3/3. I mean, it is 2 individual removes, but like I said earlier, if your threshold is 3/3, it needs to do something powerful, like what we have here with Sea Monsters, or like with Instruments as a 4/2/2. I think this card would have been way more interesting if it was a 3/2 threshold. What's also really exciting, something to point out, is I believe every element combination of 2 cost, there's this, not 2 cost, of 2 different elements, there's a unique effect, if that makes sense. So for instance, look at, we have, where's an example? Jungle Hungers, where is that? There it is. It's the moon plant with the 2/3. Look at Vigor, it's a sun animal with the 3/2. Um, it's the 2 element types. Look at Paralyzing Fright, it's an air earth with the 2/3. Trying to see if there's any other 2 elements that we've covered already. Oh, Voice of Command, it's a 3/2. So it kind of feels weird that Vanish Softly is a 2 elementer, but it's a 3/3 and not a 3/2, since all of the other ones tend to be 2/3s. So something just interesting to point out. I think the effect is it's okay. I mean, 3 costs is pretty reasonable, and remove 1 invader means remove a city, remove a town. So I could see this having a decent amount of value. The fact that it's moon air means it doesn't really combo with a lot of the spirits in the game, or maybe I should say spirits that I play. But even the spirits that can threshold this and can utilize the moon air, it's an okay card. You're not like excited, and that's why it's in B tier. Angry Bears, it's a sun fire animal. It's a 0 range. You get to do 2 fear, 2 damage. If you have a beast, 2 more damage. And then if you have this threshold, you get to destroy a building or an explorer in an adjacent land. It also adds a bunch of fear. I think this is a pretty fair costed card. I actually think this is the most fair costed card in the game. I think this is very fair. It never feels like it's game breaking when you play it, but it feels like it does enough to where you don't think it's underpowered. Moving on, Pyroclastic Flow. This card is pretty powerful. Sometimes it's in B tier, sometimes it is S tier, and that's very matchup dependent, mainly in the France and the Russia matchups. I have some gameplay videos with Stone, I believe, where I picked this card up into France, and you just see why and how powerful this card is, just because you just keep stopping all of the builds, and it's just incredible. And that's because it's a 2 damage, destroy all explorers. And then it has this jungle wetland, I guess, restriction, which adds a blight. And then if you have the 2/3/2 threshold, you get to do some additional damage. So it's 2 plus 4. So you actually get 6 damage, and then you get to add a wilds. Very reasonable. It is fast, so worst case, it's 2 damage, destroy all explorers, which slaughters Russia and France. So this is actually one of my favorite cards to get on Might Earth. If I ever get time, I'll make some Might Earth gameplay videos, and you can see how I build the spirit. Draw Towards a Consuming Void. It's a 8-cost card. You get to gather an explorer, town, city, Dahan, presence, and beast from every adjacent land. You then gain 4 fear, do 15 damage, and then you get to kill some Dahan and destroy presence from spirits. If this is the only card you play that turn, you get to forget, or you can forget, a minor, major, and unique power, and then you get to repeat the effects of above. This card, in solo, can outright win you the game. A lot of times, this 8-cost, I think it's definitely justified, but it gates out a lot of spirits from picking this card and using it. I do think this is actually perfectly costed as an 8-cost. Spirits like Memory or Keeper, spirits that tech heavily into energy, can afford this and get a massive payoff. Spill Bitterness. You guys have one of my favorite spirits in the game. I think this is the only art that Stone is depicted in. I think for the majors and minors. And it's a 5-cost fast fire, water, earth. 6 fast damage, add 2 Badlands, add a Blight. And then in 3 adjacent lands with Blight, add Badlands or Strife. The threshold is a 3/3. And in up to 3 adjacent lands, 1 damage to each invader. Once again, this threshold, being at 3 fire and 3 water, is very difficult to hit right now because we don't really have any fire water spirits. I think the only 2 is Vengeance and Snake, if I remember correctly. I mean, also Starlight and Memory, but those spirits they break all rules. But really only Vengeance can, and Serpent. And even with Vengeance, I think you still need 3 plays. Yeah, even with Vengeance, you still need 3 plays, and the energy isn't that difficult to get just because you get access to 3 energy quite easily. But needing 3 plays the threshold is pretty challenging. I think my guess is turn 5 in most games. But The fast part, though, that 6 fast damage in the Badlands is pretty powerful. The Blight ad does suck, but it's a pretty reasonable price. This card is amazing on a spirit like Volcano, just because Volcano has that +1 range from its land with 3 presence, so you can actually avoid that negative that from adding a Blight. Utter a Curse of Dread and Bone. This is a 4 energy cost moon animal. Once again, look at it's a moon animal card, and the threshold is 3/2. So I just don't know why the Vanish Softly was a 3/3 threshold. Actually, this video I'm gonna go through all of them because I've never really looked at all of the dual cost or the dual elements. So, oh, actually here, water animal. There's the other one. So I guess sea monsters is also 3/3, but this is a 3/3 that's justified though. So. As you guys can see, I'm very sensitive about this topic. So, okay, so Utter a Curse. For each blight in the target land or adjacent land, you get to add a Badlands, Disease, or Strife. You then get 2 fear and then 1 damage. If you threshold it, you get to add 1 type of each token to an adjacent land, and then you get 1 damage. I really like this card. I think it's slightly overcosted, but then again, today I played I think 3 or 4 games with my group, and this card was a game winner for the spirit I was playing. So I don't know how I feel after that game. Maybe it moves up a tier. Some of my play group was telling me they feel like this card was an A tier, and I was like, no, definitely B tier. And then after today's game, they were making fun of me for it. So I don't know. When you have the Blight on your board, it's a very reasonable card. But a lot of times in my games, I don't Blight more than 2 to 3 times, and I feel like you want at least 3 Blight to get a lot of value out of this card. Maybe if it was 3 cost, I'd be a lot more excited to play it. But being 4 cuts out a lot of spirits. It's just when it costing 4, and I look at cards like Forest of Living Obsidian or Unlock or Paralyzing Fright or Indom, Unrelenting Instruments. It's just very hard comparisons. Twisted Flowers, Sun, Moon, Air, Earth. Plant. It's a 5 cost slow, 4 fear, add a Strife. If the terror level is 2 or higher, you get to remove 2 invaders. And then if you can hit this crazy threshold of 3/2/3, you get 3 more fear and 3 damage. I'm going to be honest, and I hated this card for a long time, but one of the new spirits loves this card, and that spirit made me love this card. So I had to move it into B tier, and I found playing Earth recently, and I've been picking this card up more, and then I was playing more of Green in my playthrough videos, also picking up this card, and same with Eyes. So a lot of the new content and just, I guess, playing outside my comfort zone has made me like some of the majors more than normal. I used to think this card was really bad for a long time, but it's definitely grown on me. So moving to the next line of texts, or majors. And this video will be one of the longer ones. We're at 13 minutes, it looks like. Okay. Smothering Infestation. This is the water plant dual element card. It's a 3 cost slow, 0 range. Add a disease. If the target land is jungle or wetland, 2 fear, 3 damage. And then if you have the threshold, 1 damage to each invader. I think this card is one of the stronger B tier cards that I have listed here. If it's a jungle wetland, 2 fear, 3 damage, very reasonable. The threshold is as a 2/2, very, very reasonable. Basically allows you to kill 3 towns. I mean, it's crushes Russia, crushes France. Just an incredible, powerful card. Thickets. This is the plant air, and it looks like it's only a plant threshold. It's a 3 cost fast from a sacred site range. Target land must be inland. 2 damage, then either add 3 wilds or remove a blight. If you have the threshold, it's an additional +2 damage. I've used this card quite a lot. The fast blight removal is great, plus the small amount of damage is also pretty fun. I rarely add 3 wilds. The wilds is more of a bonus if you don't target a blighted land. I do pick this card up quite a lot, especially when I was playing Eyes for a while, just because it is double on element, so it's an easy threshold. Walls of Rock and Thorn. This is one of my favorite cards in the game. It hurt me so much to put this in B tier, but a lot of my play group thinks that it should be here. I can see an argument for bringing this up into A tier. It's a 4-cost Sun Earth plant, and it's a 2 damage, defend 8, isolate with the wilds, and then the threshold is very easy as 2/2, which adds 2 more damage, 2 more defense, and adds Badlands. The only thing that holds this card back is the Mountain Jungle. Sometimes you pick this card up and sands and wetlands are your problem lands for the next 2 turns, and you're like, well, I have this major that's amazing, but it just can't target anything, and that's why I have put it in B tier. There will be those games where this card just can't actually hit anything, and then you'll also have games where Jungle will come up 4 or 5 times, and this card you just play it every turn and it just decimates the invaders. So. Looking at Infestation of Venomous Spiders, it's a 4-cost air earth plant animal. It's a skip card. It adds a beast, gather up to 1 beast. For each beast, 1 fear, and skip 1 invader action. It is a skip card. If you hit the threshold of 2/2/3, after this power causes invaders to skip an action, you get to do 4 damage. I mean, I think this is a pretty fair cost at 4. Really, I wouldn't change anything about it. I'll pick it up if I need to skip. If I don't need to skip, it's fine. Just having the skip exist in the deck is important. Stormswath, it is a fire, air, water. Sacred Site, 1 range, 2 fear, and then it's essentially a Raging Storm. In the origin land and target land, 1 damage to every invader. If you have the threshold of 2/3/2, you get an extra fear, an extra 1 damage, and then in lands where you do damage, destroy a town. If the origin and the target land are the same land, you get to just do 2 damage to everything, which is a complete nuke. I have it in B tier just because it's incredible against France and Russia. Against adversaries like England, it's pretty much terrible. Scotland, it's pretty mediocre, but you may get a little bit more value there. Sweep into the Sea. This is a Sun, Air, Water card. Push all explorers or towns 1 land towards the nearest ocean. If the target land is coastal, destroy all explorers and towns. If you have 3/2, you get to repeat this effect into an adjacent land. This card, I think, is very well costed. There are games where it's incredible. There's games where it's pretty average. I actually just recorded a Habsburg game where I was able to use this card with Starlight. I will post that game in the comments just so you guys can see me use this card to great effectiveness. I think it's well costed at 4. I kind of wish it was 3, but it being a destroy all, if it's a coastal land, gives you tech against France, Russia, England, Habsburg, just a lot of adversaries. Flow like water, reach like air. This is the air-water dual element card. Target spirit gets +2 range with all powers. They then may push a presence, and that presence may carry 2 explorers, towns, and Dahan with it. And the threshold is easy, 2 air and 2 water, and that allows you to bring cities and blight. This is surprisingly a very underrated card by a lot of the community. I think you have to be a little bit more creative to utilize it, but I find it actually has a ton of mileage. It essentially clears a land unless you have a massively built up land already. The threshold is also very reasonable. This is an incredible card if you're playing with Ocean, because then you can just push everything into the ocean, which kills it, which is great. Bloodrack Plague, this is a water earth animal. 1 range from a sacred site, you get to add 2 disease, and then for each disease in target land, defend 1 in target land and all adjacent lands. And then the threshold is 2 earth and 4 animal, 2 fear, and then you get to do 1 damage for each disease in target land. Into target land or into an adjacent land. So I really like this card. I love the artwork. I just wish it was just a little bit better. Like I said, having 4 animal locks out a lot of spirits from thresholding it. In addition, the threshold is pretty medium. The top part is also pretty medium. I think this is one of the weaker B tier majors. I think there's so many things they could have done to make it a little bit stronger. I think if it costed 3, it'd be fine. If it was 4 cost, I really wish this was like, I wish this threshold was like a 2/2/3 rather than a 2/4. But really, I think this is pretty underwhelming outside of picking it up with Vengeance or maybe Starlight. Poison land, it's 1 fear, 7 damage, add a blight. 3 earth, 2 plant, 2 animal for the threshold. For each blight in target land, 1 fear, and 4 damage. This is a big blight card, especially if you can threshold it, but it does a ton of damage. Like I said with Insatiable Hunger, if you combo Poison Land with Infinite Vitality, it also combos really well, just because the elements line up basically perfectly. And you don't get the negative of having all of the blight, and you just get that extra bonus of the extra 4 damage. I think for 3 cost, it does quite a lot. 7 damage deals with the city, town, and explorer against every adversary, and then against England, it kills a city and a town. So, very reasonable card. Probably my favorite major in the game, Dream of the Untouched Land. It's a 6 cost moon, water, earth, plant, and animal. Remove up to 3 blight and up to 3 health of invaders. And then there's this crazy threshold here. And if you do, it allows a player to pro-lift twice and then give them this awesome build skip once a turn. It's a board-wide build skip. Very, very powerful card if you threshold it. It's S tier if you can. Otherwise, it's B tier. This top part is pretty underwhelming. I've talked to a bunch of people. This is one of the cards that I wish they could slightly adjust. I wish it was 5 cost. Whenever I see this card, I try to make it work regardless, because everyone has that one card that they just love playing. I think it was 5 cost to be more balanced. I wish another option is maybe remove up to 3 blight, but it also says gather 1 blight first. You very rarely remove more than 1 blight with this card. So I wish it was gather a blight, then remove up to 3, something like that, just to get a little bit more value, because if you're playing the 6 cost card without the bottom part, it's pretty bad. It's close to probably C tier. Okay. Moving on to C tier. Start with that first line of text, and we are at, let's see, 22 minutes. Still moving forward. Okay, so we have Cleansing Flood. This is a Sun water card. It's a 5 energy, slow. 4 damage, remove a blight. If you have 4 water, 10 damage. So once again, it having that 4 threshold makes this card very difficult to hit. In addition, if you don't hit it, for 5 energy, you're doing 4 damage and you're removing a blight. That's just not good enough. 4 damage is just terrible. Well, I shouldn't say terrible. It's terrible for the cost that you're paying here. A lot of times, like Angry Bears here, 2 damage, and then if you have a beast, plus 2 damage. So this card, Angry Bears, for 2 less energy, you get to do the same amount of damage and 2 fear. Now, granted, this is 0 range. Granted, this is also 1 range, so you have a little bit more flexibility. But the flexibility just isn't enough. And yeah, you get a blight removal on this card, but it's just very difficult to really line up the 4 damage with the blight removal. I think if they were to redesign this card, I think making this a what I would do is I would first, there's plenty of ways to adjust it. You could adjust the cost, adjust the effects. I don't know what their end game plan for this card, but my go-to change, I'd make this 4 cost. I'd make the threshold a 2/3, so I'd make it 2 sun, 3 water, just because we don't really have many water thresholds. I mean, I guess we have Spill Bitterness and Sea Monsters, but I'd make it 2/3 once again to follow that theme of the sun, the 2 element cards with the 2/3 thresholds. I would leave the top at 4 damage, though I still think 4 damage blight removal for 4 energy is a bit overcosted. However, having a very generous threshold of 2/3 kind of makes up for that. Another option is they leave the 5 energy cost and then they just make this top part just much more crazy. I don't know what you would do, but I would just improve this top part. This could literally be 8 damage, and I think it would still be pretty medium of a card, which is kind of crazy when we get to the cards down here. Okay, Focus the Lands English. It's 5 energy. It's a sun, 1 range from a slow power, 1 range. If this power destroys any buildings, 5 fear. You get to gather 5 blight, and then 1 damage per blight. This is just a lot of bad in this card. I think the biggest problem is it's one element here, and I understand 1 element cards are fine, but if you're playing 1 element as a major, it means you're basically ignoring your spirit's thresholds, and The top part of this card isn't even that good. Let's say max you can gather 3 Blight. So it's doing 3 damage and 5 fear for 5 energy. And you're not hitting your thresholds on your spirit because this card only has 1 element. Um, I just Same thing with Cleansing Flood. If I wish the cost was a little bit lower, I wish I would add more elements, but at the same time, I get it not to add elements for thematic purposes. So I'd probably drop, like, ideally, if this is 3 energy, and then you maybe make this as like 3 fear or something. I don't know. You would have to make some change like that, and it would significantly improve the card. If you want it to still cost 5 energy, it needs to be something. I think the damage per blight needs to be 2 damage, and then I would look at possibly the threshold allowing you to do damage and then allow you to do damage into an adjacent land or something like that. Um, Something crazy. It's just not good enough. A lot of spirits. I mean, I don't think I ever want this card ever. I only have it here just because I've seen some players use it and it actually matter. But a lot of times, this card only helps a player that's already made a lot of mistakes, and it this card doesn't help you when you're ahead. It helps you when you're behind, kind of. But like once again, I would rather grab like a card like Paralyzing Fright because that at least gives you fear cards and kind of continues to push you forward. Well, this just doesn't really do that. Tsunami, it's a 6 cost. It's a Water Earth. Once again, another 3/2 threshold. 2 fear, 8 damage to a coastland, and then in each other coastland on the same board, 1 fear and 4 damage. Destroys a bunch of Dahan as well. I have this in C tier because a lot of times it's just not good enough. The coastal targeting is very restrictive. Sometimes the card is fine and it gets play, and that's why it's in C tier. But a lot of times, it costing 6 energy is just too much. Moving on to the next card, we have Accelerated Rot. It is a 4-cost Sun Water Plant. It has to target jungle wetland and is 2 fear, 4 damage. It is a 3/2/3 threshold for more damage and a blight removal. Very similar to Cleansing Flood. It's just slightly not good enough. The good news is that it is way better than Cleansing Flood because you do have -1 energy cost to the card. You also gained another plant, and the top part has a little bit more flexibility. Yes, you do have to target a jungle wetland versus targeting from a wetland, but it does give you some fear and further range. The threshold is still pretty difficult, being a 3/2/3 versus a 4, but this card is still, I would say, overall much better than Cleansing Flood, just because of that 1 energy. And I still think it's overcosted, so there's that. One last thing to talk about for Tsunami. This is one of those cards that I can see possibly moving up into A tier, B tier, maybe. Definitely not higher than B tier, just because a lot of spirits can't make use of it, and it having this very restrictive targeting really is awkward. So, okay, looking at Cast Down. So this is a Sun, Moon, Water, Earth. 9 cost. You choose a coastal land, destroy all invaders, 6 fear. And then if you have this threshold, you get to destroy the board. This is a card, it's either the best card in the game or the worst card in the game, and that just depends if you can threshold it. The top part for 9 energy is significantly overcosted, especially with it having to target a coastal land and it has to be a sacred site. However, the threshold is pretty busted, but it is a 4/4 threshold, so it is very challenging to hit. I believe Eric actually said if this card were to be redesigned now, I think he said he would have dropped the cost a couple and then possibly limit the threshold to once a game. Don't quote me on that. We talked about it earlier in one of the chats, and he had mentioned that this top part was overcosted and the bottom part is too good. So, but yeah, a lot of times this card is either too strong or too weak, which is why it fits rightfully in C tier. Okay, Death Falls Gently from Open Blossoms. It's a Moon Air plant card. It's 3 range from a Jungle Sands. It's 4 damage, and then if invaders remain, you get to add a disease. It has this crazy 3/3 threshold for 3 fear and 2 more disease, and this threshold is just really, really bad. And the top part, once again, 4 energy for 4 damage is just not good enough. You see it here with Cleansing Flood. It's 5 energy. You see it here as it with Accelerated Rot. It's just not, just a little bit too overcosted. This 3/3 threshold really should be 2/2, and I think I'd be happy keeping the threshold the same. I think the 4 damage, I think if it was just 4 damage at a disease, I think I'd be happy with that rather than this condition. And then I'd probably reduce the range a little bit. Um, that's assuming they want to keep the concept of the card the same. Manifest is this Incarnation. This card is a Sun, Earth, animal card, or Sun, Moon, Earth animal. You choose a land with cities. It's 0 range. You get 6 fear, then +1 fear for each building, and target, and then also +1 fear for each presence in that land, and then you get to remove some buildings, and then the Invader's Ravage. I'm on the fence with this card. There are some games where I feel like it is in F tier all the way down here. Other times I feel like it's rightfully in C tier, and other games it's in B tier. It just depends on the spirits that you're playing, really. Unfortunately, it costing 6, just like with Tsunami, blocks out a lot of spirits from actually playing this card. Though it does give quite a lot of fear, 6 fear, and then plus the fear for buildings. Usually this card can get you 12, 16 fear, just depending on the board state and what adversary you're playing against. The 3/3 threshold is pretty mediocre. I wish that if you were doing a threshold like that, 3/3, I wish it just said invaders do 0 damage in the land or something really crazy, because then it'd be like there's no downside to the card. Invaders do -6 damage. That's basically useless. This threshold just reads to get 3 more fear, which players are just like, it's whatever. It doesn't actually change anything for the card, which I think is a little sad. So either I would make this like a 2/2 and leave it the same, or leave it at 3/3 and just make it more interesting. I think 6 cost for the top part might be fine. I think in a perfect world it would be 5 energy, I think, for it to really be a B card. And making a 5 energy may actually bring it to A tier. The difference between 5 and 6 energy is huge. Okay, Talons of Lightning. This is a fire air card. So it is one of those dual element cards. It is a 3/3 threshold. It's 3 fear, 5 fast damage. You have to target a mountain wetland. If you threshold it, you get to kill a bunch of adjacent buildings. I think this card, once again, it's like you're paying a premium, 6 energy for 5 fast damage. Accelerated Rod is 4 energy for 4 damage. You're paying 2 more energy for 1 more damage and 1 more fear. It's just, I don't know. I think it's just too. I think this was just them overvaluing fast damage versus slow damage. But yeah, this card is definitely overcosted. I think if it was 4 energy, I would be pretty fine with it. Yeah, if it was 4 energy, I'd be okay with it. It'd probably still be overcosted. Actually, 4 energy is probably pretty reasonable, because I think Accelerated Rod is overcosted at 4 energy right now. So if this is 3 and this is 4, I think I'm pretty happy. Okay, moving to the second row of C tier. Okay. And just before I talk about these cards, I do think Tsunami, Manifest, Cast Down, Accelerated Rod, I think these cards are all further at the top of C tier if I had to like rank them. While a card like Focus, Cleansing Flood, Death Falls, Talons, those are cards I think near the bottom of C tier. The Wounded Wilds turn on its assailants. It's a 4 cost. It's a fire, plant, and animal card. Target a land with blight. Add 2 badlands. Gather up to 2 beasts. 1 damage per blight, beasts, and wilds. If you have the threshold 2/3/2, you get 2 fear per invader destroyed. I think this card's pretty reasonable. I think there could be an argument for it to be B tier. Possibly. There are very few spirits that really want this card. I think Fangs and Lure are the only 2. I just think it's just not doing enough. I mean, you get to add 2 badlands, you get to gather 2 things, and then usually it's going to do around, I think it's like 3 to 5 damage usually, which is pretty reasonable for it being a 4 cost, because I'm complaining about 4 costs doing 4 damage, and this is going to be 4 costs doing 5-ish damage. The problem is you have to target a land with blight, which very significantly restricts this card's power potential. I also wish the threshold was a little bit more interesting. Two fear per invader destroyed is just kind of, I mean, it's different, but not cool with the card. I wish it said add two more bad lands, uh, plus two damage or something like that. Give me more tokens. I don't want fear. I mean, you can have fear. Just I want something a little bit more interesting. The land thrashes in Furious Pain. It's a 4-cost Moonfire Earth card, 2 range, targeting a blight, 2 damage per blight in target land. Then you get 1 damage per blight in adjacent lands, and then you have this 3/3 threshold to repeat the effect. I really don't like this card, and it just shows you how much I don't like this card because I play Stone, a pure Earth spirit that blights everywhere, and I think this is a terrible card on that spirit. It's just the threshold is very challenging for a lot of spirits. It has to target a blight land, and the damage in that blight land is pretty medium for 4 cost. I think if it was 3 damage per blight in target land, and then 1 damage per blight in adjacent lands, maybe that might be better. I'm not sure. A lot of times this is just 4 damage for 4 energy, which just like Accelerated Rot is pretty mediocre, except now you have to target a blight land versus a jungle wetland, and you also get no fear. So Pillar of Living Flame. This is actually one of the weakest cards I think in C tier. It's a single fire card. It's a 5-cost card. It's a slow 2 range from a sacred site, 3 fear, 5 damage, and then if you target a jungle wetland, add a blight. It's just, and if you have 4 fire, 2 fear, and 5 more damage, it has the same problem as Cleansing Flood. It's just very, very overcosted for what it's doing. I do think it's slightly better than Cleansing Flood, but not by much. Getting the extra damage and the extra fear is pretty reasonable, at least. Cleansing Flood, the blight removal is a lot of times just not good enough. With Pillar of Living Flame, the fear actually usually gains you an extra fear card, so it's usually getting you about a fear card and a half, which is pretty good. But once again, this card should really cost, my guess is 3 to 4 energy. I Threshold is so bad, I would probably do 3 to 4. And once again, the threshold is bad because it's costing 4 fire. It's just very, very hard to hit for a lot of spirits. Like, what spirit is going to hit this? And like, you'd be like, oh, it's Wildfire, right? Wildfire is a fire spirit, but like, which Wildfire player is playing majors? Like, you don't have the energy to play majors just based on how Wildfire's income is designed. So maybe, I guess, was it Lightning can play this card and threshold it? Maybe Immense. I think Immense can. Yeah, Immense can. Maybe Vengeance. Yeah, Vengeance probably likes this card. Yeah, Vengeance probably likes this because it's, well, you still need 3 card plays to threshold it. Yeah, it's just, yeah, the 4 fire is just really, really busted, really tough. Okay. Dissolve the Bonds of Kinship. It's a fire, water, animal card. It's a 4-cost. Replace a city with 2 explorers. Replace a town with 1 explorer. Replace a Dahan with an explorer. Push all of the explorers. I think for 4 energy, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's getting rid of cities. It's getting rid of towns. And then Threshold 2/2/3, it basically has those explorers and buildings trade. I think it's a unique card. It's just in matchups like France and Russia, this card can't be played. It's nice into England. It's just the threshold is very challenging to hit. I think Vengeance and Many Minds are the 2 that love this card. Everyone else is just probably going to stay away from it. Fire and Flood, everybody's favorite card. I know a lot of players on the main Discord love this card, and maybe even on the forums, but unfortunately this card is very, very overcosted. It is a 7-cost Sun, Fire, Water card. It gets to do 4 damage in 2 different lands. If you have 3 fire, 4 more damage. If you have 3 water, 4 more damage. It's just not... it's 7 cost. You really need to make an impact, and you can see that they found that with Consuming Void at 8 cost, they really found that sweet spot when they made the Jagged Earth expansion. But for the Branch and Claw, this card is just a little bit too much. I think if it costed 6, it might be fine. The threshold being 3/3, I think is very unique and interesting. I just wish it was a little bit more, like if it was 4 damage and then you got to do something kind of cool as well. I think that would be
very interesting rather than just flat damage. Because when you fully threshold this, it's 16 damage, right? Which is good. But what spirit is hitting this card with is playing this card, hitting both the 3 fire and the 3 water, and has the energy to do that. Pretty much the only thing is like an unlocked serpent, and at that point it really doesn't matter because serpent can threshold any major, right? Like if you're at the point where you're playing Fire and Flood and double thresholding it, the game is like you're probably so far ahead it really doesn't matter what happens on the board anymore. Terrifying Nightmares. It's a 4-cost Moon Air. It's a fast push 4, 2 fear. For 4 Moon, you get 4 more fear. It's not a bad card. It's just, I wish it did a little bit more. I think if it pushed a city, I think that'd be very cool. We've already seen majors being able to push cities with Flow Like Water. I wish it was push up to 4/4, and then you may push up to 1 city or something. It's just when you look at a card like Paralyzing Fright, Fright costs the exact same as Terrifying Nightmares, except you're getting double the fear and an action skip with an easier threshold. While Terrifying Nightmares is like, oh, you actually have this hard threshold of 4 Moon, and you don't even get like a bonus, right? Like, or the bonus is 4 fear, but like that's the same bonus as Paralyzing Fright. And 2/3 is a lot easier than 4 Moon. So, like, I wish it was 4 Moon for 4 fear, and then it did something really cool. Like, I don't know, something unique. Someone come up with an idea. So, Strangling Firevine. It's a 4-cost. It's a fire plant. Once again, it's a 2-cost or a 2 element major that has a 2/3 threshold. It says destroy all explorers, add a wilds in target land, add a wilds into the originating sands, and then 1 damage per wilds in target or adjacent land. I think this is a pretty reasonable card. I think sometimes it's B tier, though, because it costs 4 and it's a slow, and it's usually only doing 2 damage, destroying all explorers. It's just not enough. Against Russia and against France, you can get a lot of value, just because that the wilds matter later in the game. But against England, this card just is textless. Or against Habsburg, it just basically does nothing. The threshold also isn't good enough. For 2 fire and 3 plant, just 1 extra damage per wilds. I mean, if you're going to do that, at least allow me to add a couple more wilds. Like if it said add 2 wilds and then do this, I'd be pretty happy because then it'd do some more damage and it would be just a little bit more of a reward. Melt Earth into Quicksand. It's a 4-cost Moon, Water, Earth. 1 fear, 2 damage, isolate the land. After invaders or Dahan are moved into the land, destroy them. If you have 2/4/2, you get to do more damage, add Badlands and Wilds. Because it is a 2/4/2 threshold, that 4 water really makes a lot of spirit, or really pushes out a lot of spirits from thresholding this. So really, this is a 4-cost, fast, 2 damage, 1 fear, isolate. It's just not good enough. I think the only time this card sees play is when you can combo it for the bottom part. After invaders are moved into the land, destroy them. I think if you can combo this with like massive pushing, like a finder effect, then you can get a ton of value. But most of the time, this card is just overcosted. Okay, moving to the final tier. I know this has been a long video. We are at 43 minutes. We are almost done. We have F tier. And this is the other Vengeance of the Dead. We'll talk about that in a second. So starting off with Volcanic Eruption. This is a Fire Earth, 8 energy, 6 fear, 20 damage, add a blight. Has to be from a mountain. And then it is a 2-cost or a 2-element major and has a 4/3 cost. If you threshold it, you instead destroy all invaders, add a wilds, and then in each adjacent land 10 damage, and if there's no blight, add a blight. The problem with this card is it costs too much, and the effect is just a little bit too painful for the cost. I get wanting to have an effect like this, but because you have to target from a mountain, it also is adding a blight, and then it's killing all of your Dahan and beasts, and then it costs 8 energy. It's just very challenging for a lot of spirits to actually utilize. I really don't know what changes I would make to this card, because like I understand that they want to have these very high major cost cards. I could see maybe dropping it to 7 cost, and then maybe lowering the fear on it just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more accessible for spirits. It's just people can't play the card. Like players can't fit this into their action economy because it just costs too much. Transform into a Murderous Darkness. It's a 6-cost Moonfire Air Water plant. Target spirit chooses a sacred site in that land. Replace each of their presence with Badlands. The presence leaves the game. You then get to push the Badlands. 3 fear, and then 3 damage per presence replaced. The threshold is a 3/2/2. Very challenging to hit. If you do get it, it's 1 damage in an adjacent land. That's it. I'm pretty sure this is the worst card in the game. Almost certain, actually, that it's the worst card in the game. It's very expensive. I mean, it has a lot of elements, which is great. I like the theme of it, but it costs too much and it does too little. Like, let's say I'm choosing just a Sacred Site. For 6 energy, I do 6 damage, 3 fear, gain 2 Badlands, but I'm losing 2 presence. So like I'm taking a negative for only 6 damage, 3 fear. And the Badlands is kind of whatever. The threshold is pretty challenging to hit. I mean, it's 3/2/2, so like it's not the worst. I know I've said 3/2/2 is pretty easy earlier in my videos, but for this card, because it's a Moon, Fire, Air, it's just a very awkward element combination. And guess which spirit is Moon, Fire, Air? One of the worst spirits in the game, and I think that's part of the reason. Spirits that play in this element set aren't really good. I think Trickster is the only spirit that plays this elemental set, and this is not what Trickster would ever want. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about this card. I mean, if you replace 3 presence, it's now 9 damage, which is kind of cool. I mean, that's an extra presence you lose. I don't know what else to say. Grant Hatred. It's another 2-element major. It's a 4-cost, slow 1 range. For each strife or blight, 1 fear, 2 damage. If you destroy all invaders, add a beast with a threshold of 4/2 to add more strife. I think this is one of the worst cards in the game as well. The only reason why I think this has hope is there's some new stuff in the next expansion that can utilize this card, and I think this card will actually see some play, moving it up to C tier, but it will still, even with that new stuff, I don't think it can ever surpass C tier. This card is just so bad. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, most spirits aren't adding a lot of strife, so the fact that this top part is doing damage based on strife, it's just not enough. So doing damage based on blight can work, but then again, like, if you have 2 blight in the land, something has gone terribly wrong. So that means this card is going to be 4 energy for 2 fear and 4 damage, which, as I just said, is terrible on accelerated rot. But now now we're saying that damage is scaled with blight, so it's just not good at all. If this card destroys all invaders, add a beast. I know thematically that's what they were thinking, but like the beast add is so minimal, like I don't know, like it's just not enough. Very, very weak card. I do like the artwork on it, which is kind of funny, but fortunately it's just not very good. Okay. Mists of Oblivion. This is one of those cards that could be moved up to C tier. My group criticized me a lot for it, but I think it belongs here. I find this card... I did not mean to do that. Yeah, well, that's what I get. Now my circle is really small. There we go. Yeah, Mists of Oblivion. It's just 1 fear for building destroyed, and then it's 1 damage to each invader. The only time this card really does something is when you are playing against Russia, because it can stop all the explorers, which can stop a double ravage, and that can be really helpful. But it costing 4 energy is just terrible. I wish this card costed 2. I think it would actually get some play if it costed 2 energy, and I think it'd be very interesting. Keeping it 4 could work. They just really need to adjust this effect. Maybe do something along the lines of invaders in target land they don't heal, or I don't know, make it more up Shroud's alley. Something like that. Okay, now getting towards Vengeance of the Dead. This is the original version. I'm going to bring back the version I have up here just for comparison for those players that want to see that. There we go. So the reason why this card is so terrible is because of the effect. So you get 1 extra fear compared to the exploratory, but it says that after each effect destroys a building or Dahan, you only get 1 damage per building rather than damage per health. That means if you kill 2 towns, that's only 2 damage versus the 4 damage from Vengeance of the Dead. So, and it also doesn't count explorers at all either. So let's say an amazing case, you kill 4 towns and 2 cities. That's 6 damage. For 3 energy, you get 6 damage, and you have to combo it with another heavy damage dealing power. It's too much. At least with this card, it has a little bit lower fear, which I think is fine. In exchange, they have a much powerful effect. And really, you can't abuse the power of this card unless you threshold it. I think Eric did a great job with the exploratory version of the card. I'm excited to see what versions he has for specifically these 4 cards. I for sure know if we do get a second edition, these cards will all be adjusted. I know they also talked about this card. Actually, I should probably not do circles. Maybe I'll do like little stars or something. Here, I'll do stars. I know they said cards like this. Actually, let me change my color to red so people can actually see. There we go. I know I've read these are the cards that the devs are aware are dramatically overcosted. So hopefully, and this one as well. And they may think some of the other ones are as well, but at least these I know for sure that they would be addressed if there was ever a hypothetical second edition. So, okay, the last card here is Savage Transformation, and once again, I get criticism from some of my players. One of my players actually thinks this card is one of the best cards in the game. I don't know what she's thinking, but she thinks, I believe it's up into A tier, I think. I don't see it. Let's look at the card here. It's a 2 cost. It does have that 2/3 threshold, or not 2 cost, or it is a 2 cost, but it's a 2 element major with that 2/3 threshold. 2 fear. Replace an explorer with a beast, and then if you have the threshold, you get to do it in an adjacent land. I just don't think this card is good enough for its cost. I think it's very close. I think if the card was fast, I think that's the only change you need to make, and I think this card gets a lot of play. But it being slow, only dealing with an explorer is just not good enough for a major. I think the only spirit that wants this card is what is it? Many Minds, I believe. Many Minds or Fangs, just because they can easy threshold this. So the threshold, they don't have to work towards it. Well, that concludes this video. Okay, good. So that's good. Okay. So that concludes this video. As you guys can see, this ran a little bit longer than the previous one. We got through all of the majors. If this video helped you, if you liked it, like, subscribe. Looking forward to hearing what your guys' thoughts are. Maybe you guys think I'm wrong about one of these lower majors and you really enjoy the theme or the power. I would love to hear it in the comments. I do have a new video series coming out. As you guys know, the new expansion, Nature's Incarnate, is just around the corner. I believe it's about a week from the day I'm recording this video. So look out. I'll be doing a ton of videos for that stuff. As we get stuff spoiled, I'll discuss it, my thoughts on it, and what I like comboing it with majors and just stuff in the current game. Of course, in those videos, I'm not going to be talking about anything that's not spoiled, so I'm just going to be following the backer kit that will be posted online, and we'll go through that in my future videos. I will see you guys in the next video.